Hello, I'm Adam Grimes, and this is Unit 6 of Module 1, Homework. So we're going to talk about what you can do to continue your learning and carry you forward to the next step. And it's pretty easy for this module. Honestly, this has been an introduction. For many of you, this is absolute basic review, and we're going to get going a lot faster in the next unit or next module. And for those of you, however, who are starting from scratch, dig in deeply, spend some time with the ideas here, maybe go back and rewatch part of a video, perhaps take some notes. You might need to watch some things a few times, or maybe not. But here are some other things that I think you can do. I'm going to suggest some readings from my book, The Art and Science of Technical Analysis. You can get that book on Amazon. It's available on Kindle or as a hardcover. And for a book like this, at least I prefer to have the hardcover. It's a little bit easier to see the charts and just to hold it in your hand. But I will also say that a little bit of history, the original reason I came up with doing a course like this was to help people read my book, because it's a book that needs to be studied and absorbed kind of like a textbook. And I thought that it might make sense having some outside material like this that would kind of help to put the book together. So that was the original idea for the course. The course, however, in its first iteration, really grew beyond that and took on a life of its own. And I'll say this many, many times, you do not have to have the book. What you're going to find is the book gives a little bit different flavor. The book is maybe a little bit more theoretical, a little bit more of a classroom academic approach. And for some of you will like having that other perspective. It's absolutely not essential. I also have written, and each week, each module, I will pull out specific writings from my blog, some podcasts and things that you can use as other resources to kind of expand on what we're doing here. So I'm going to give you some ideas there. Also, I want you to spend some time looking at price charts, exploring sources, and then two more things, doing a little bit of charting by hand and some single bar chart stories. Seems like a lot. It's actually not, I promise. So here are the recommended readings from The Art and Science of Technical Analysis. These will also be linked under this lesson, so you'll find them easily. And here are a few blog posts and a podcast. These blog posts, the first blog post, obviously, you can tell by the URL what they're about, right? The first one is going to dig into charting by hand, just a little bit more on that. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. And then the second blog post and the podcast talk about the process of becoming a trader. And this is some writing, some thinking that I did a few years ago that I think is kind of interesting. I think it really puts this in context, and it explains why learning to trade is not go buy a $2,000 course and then magically you can trade. It's why that sort of thing and this kind of learning is part of the process, but it's really a journey. This is really about you growing to become a trader, and this will just give you a little bit more background on that. So one of the other things I think you should do, that's 1, 2. Here's 3. The third thing is to look at some price charts. Just go do it. And if you are an experienced trader, then look at some price charts and pretend you're not. Try to see with beginner's eyes. There is so much value in going back to that point where you take those first steps and where you think of things from first principles. And many times, I know many of you, you're not even listening to me. If you're experienced traders, you've already tuned out. For various reasons. You think this guy is crazy. But I can tell you, because I have seen it and I have heard it from many people who have done it, that if you can go back to trying to see with a beginner's eyes, with a beginner's mind, and leave everything you have learned and just start over, take a few minutes to do it. What's to be lost? It's a few minutes. Otherwise, you'd be looking at kittens on YouTube, or I don't know what you look at. I don't need to know. But just take a few minutes to look at some charts. If you are a new trader, then go play with some charts. And I give you a couple free sources here. There are a lot of free sources online. These are just 2 very old resources that have been around. And I think if you're watching these videos in 10 years, they'll likely still be around. They'll still be there in some capacity. You have many choices for paid platforms, and here's some free resources too. If you are just beginning, then experiment with different settings, lines, candles, bars, different time periods. Just look back at some history. Think about some things that have happened in the recent or distant past. Depends how far back your charts go, and see how the market was affected. And some of the homework is going to touch on some of those things too. So just explore, play. It's a sandbox, just play. Now let's talk about charting by hand. Again, some of you have already tuned me out. In fact, some of you probably stopped listening, turn this video off already. But one of the consistent pieces of feedback that I have received from, I don't know. I don't know how many traders. The course has been out several years. Probably 100 people have told me that this discipline made a tremendous difference in some ways they couldn't even quantify, but in their ability to see patterns, to think about patterns, to absorb patterns. And also it's a weird kind of maybe meditation thing. Like it will give you a sense of clarity over time. So you do this in two ways. One is you record prices. And this is just a matter of taking a piece of paper, pick your 3 to 5 markets and write down prices. I would suggest one way to do it is just, let's say you're kind of a broad market trader. Maybe you'd write down the S&P 500, gold prices, crude oil prices, the euro, US dollar. I'm looking at this from a US centric perspective. Write down 3 to 5 markets, soybean futures maybe. If you're a stock trader, then pick 3 to 5 stocks, write down their prices once a day. If you trade current, you figure this out, right? Just pick some markets. I say 4 to 12. 12 is quite a lot. I think writing 3 to 5 end of day is fine. If you are already more involved in markets, then a higher number is probably going to be better. If you're a day trader, maybe you write these down every 30 minutes. The rhythm of doing that, and when I feel that I lose my sense of the markets, returning to this very simple practice has reaped me so many dividends over the years. Just the rhythm of regularly writing down prices will engage your brain. I'm also going to suggest you chart by hand, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You can do this in two ways. One, just draw bar charts. And the second is to draw swing charts. So really you have two categories here. Just writing down prices numerically, that's category 1. Category 2 is doing some kind of charting by hand. And then I'm going to suggest a couple ways you can do that. And this is really about finding what works for you. So here's a piece of graph paper. And now we get to the best part of the course. You get to see my extremely limited artistic skills, even more limited on the screen. So I'm using a pen here, and I'll just draw, just for fun, we should put some price labels here. This is exactly what I would do with a piece of graph paper. And again, depending what market you trade, you have to figure out how to number these. And if you're drawing bar charts, I probably would not try to draw candles. If you're a little bit more artistic and on paper, you probably could. But drawing a bar chart is a relatively simple thing to do. End of day, this does not take much time. If you are a day trader, maybe you draw 30-minute bars or something like that. So look at that artwork, right? That's one possibility. The other possibility is, and this is what I did for years, I had giant charts of the S&P, and I think I did bond futures. It seems like I did crude oil futures, but I think I probably did bond futures. And I had it stretching all around my office. And what you'll find is you'll go off one edge of the chart and you have to tape another piece of paper onto it. And that can be kind of fun. But what you need to do is to specify some type of reversal. I'll go back to the previous slide in a moment. I'll show you the possibilities here. But you could do a numerical reversal. So let's just say that our theoretical market starts at $10, and each one of these small lines here would be $2. And let's say we're going to do a reversal to be $2. So this is similar to point and figure charting, by the way, if you know what that is. So you start at $10 and you go up to 14, and the market comes down to 13. What do? We do nothing, because it's not yet hit our reversal criteria. And then the market goes up to 15, so we extend our line up. And then it turns to 15 and goes down to 12. Well, that's here, right? So then what we do, because we've made a reversal, which actually the reversal would have happened at 13. We knew we needed to draw this line. And then you draw this line and continue until we have another fluctuation that sends us back up more than 2. And you continue the line up until we have another fluctuation. And I'm going to try to continue drawing while I talk. And what you will see is you get some kind of chart that looks a little bit like this. And on that blog post, I show you a small part of one of my charts that I did by hand. And you'll see, the kind of interesting thing is you'll start to see some patterns, particularly if it's a market that you already know, you'll start to see some of the patterns that you may already know expressed in a different way. So your chart will look like this. That's, I think, actually, I did better than I thought I would. So, but that's what your chart will look like. I would do this consistently. I'm going to flip back to the previous slide. So how to define this flipping of the chart? Well, one possibility that I just suggested was the price-based reversal. And you just pick an amount. It's hard to say what that amount should be because it'll be different for every market, but you can kind of intuitively figure that out. If you are starting from scratch, you completely don't know what to do, then I would say actually it's very hard to say. I think you can probably figure it out. Another possibility is to put on a moving average. So you would have your price bars here, and then you would have your moving average that cuts through them, something like this. And what you would do is maybe wait for a close below the moving average. So here, your closes are above, and your line would be going up here, up, pretend it's vertical. And then here, when you flip down, you would start to do your down bar. This flips right back up. So the thing that you will see with this chart is that the horizontal axis is not time. It's not at all time. Rather, it's a measure of activity. We talked about tick charts. Well, this is a different thing too. So here you would go up and then flip down. So it's really the crossing of the moving average. And then there are other trend indicators, if you're familiar with those, that you can use. It truly does not matter what method you use. That's why I'm not too focused on saying what's the price-based reversal, because it really doesn't matter. The point is you want to end up with something that looks a little bit like this. And if how will you know you did your reversal wrong? Well, if that you picked a bad reversal value. If your chart looks something like this and you have no reversals, then you've probably picked a reversal value that's too big. On the other hand, if you find yourself, I guess you really probably couldn't go too small, but if you found that you're having to do a reversal practically every bar, then you probably went too short. But I think with a little bit of trial and error, you can figure that out and become comfortable with it. So this is all important. Let me go back to just to hit the list here again. So we're really talking about 5 categories. Reading from my book, if you wish to do that. If you have the book, great. If you don't, you'll be fine without it. Readings from my blog. Playing with price charts, just exploring. If you're an experienced trader, consider trying to do this with a beginner's mind. A little bit of charting by hand, which can include both writing down prices and some type of charting, such as I've shown you. And then the single bar chart stories, which will be a PDF that is accessible at the end of this module. So that brings us to the conclusion of Module 1. This was mostly introduction, and in the next module, we'll start to get a little bit deeper, quite a bit quicker. I will look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.